My name is Evelyn Hart. Some people reach old age quietly, easing into it like slipping into a warm bath. I wasn't granted that luxury. Mine arrived like a cold draft under a locked door setting, unwelcome, and carrying whispers I wasn't meant to hear. I've always believed life announces its turning points with sound. A baby's first cry, a lover's goodbye, a door slamming, and now, a voice on the other end of a phone I didn't even know was still connected. It happened on a Thursday morning. The kettle had just begun its thin whistle, the winter sun paling through my kitchen window. I was wiping a bit of spilled sugar from the counter when my phone buzzed. My son's name flashed across the screen. Daniel, 46 years old, handsome, ambitious, always in a hurry. I thought he was calling from the airport before his trip. I answered, but instead of his voice, I heard wind, waves, and then laughter. His wife, Melissa, bright and brittle like glass about to crack. "Put it on speaker," she said. My hands are full. A rustle, a beep. Then Daniel's voice, closer now, unaware. "She won't fight it, Mel. She can't. Mom's slowing down. She barely remembers the doctor appointments, and you saw how she handled the stairs last week. It's time." A second voice, Melissa, smooth, rehearsed. "She's had a long life. You've done your part. Care is better left to professionals. Once she's moved, we can finally handle the house." That word. Handle. As if my home, the place where every photograph, every meal, every tear had left an imprint, was an object waiting to be processed like a shipping crate. Daniel sighed. "The property value is insane right now. We'd be stupid not to act. I already spoke to the placement coordinator at Willow Pines. They'll prepare the papers once we get back." Willow Pines, a nursing facility on the edge of town. I'd driven past it once, a gray building that tried to hide its sharp edges behind flowers planted by volunteers. I stood there in my kitchen, hands still on the kettle, listening to my only child discuss my future like scheduling a delivery. They didn't know I could hear them. They didn't know the call never disconnected. "Just imagine," Melissa said, lowering her voice. "No more guilt. No more weekly visits. And the sale of that house could wipe out our debt." Daniel laughed softly, the way he used to laugh when he was a boy, stealing cookies from the jar. "Mom won't like it," he said, "but liking it isn't the point. It's what's necessary." I felt something inside me shift, not break, not crack, but shift, like a door inside my ribcage had been quietly unlocked. The kettle screamed behind me. I didn't move. A mother knows many kinds of pain, the ache of childbirth, the sting of betrayal, the burn of disappointment. But this one was deeper, older, something I thought I'd grown to, sturdy to feel. My son was planning my erasure. I put the kettle aside and sank into the nearest chair. Their voices carried a murmur of plans, numbers, timing, cold, tidy, efficient. I felt a numb calm wash over me. Not sadness, not anger, something else. Clarity. I listened until the call finally clicked, ending by itself. Then I sat in silence, letting the truth settle over me like dust. I had raised that boy. I had worked 2 jobs to keep a roof over his head after his father died. I had walked to work in snowstorms so he'd have lunch money. I had given him everything, but I had never taught him this. His mother was not weak, not fragile, not disposable. I stood up, slowly, carefully, like a woman stepping back into her own skin. If Daniel believed I was drifting into confusion, then he did not know me at all. I wiped the counter. I poured myself tea. I watched the sun crawl across the table. And, as the world carried on in its ordinary rhythm, I made a decision that would change all of our lives. I would not confront him. I would not plead. I would not ask for explanations, apologies, or understanding. No, I would respond the only way an old woman with a sharp mind and a lifetime of quiet strength knows how, silently, thoroughly, unforgettably. That night, I pulled out the old metal lockbox from the top shelf of my bedroom closet. Inside were documents I had kept tucked away for years, bank papers, pension statements, the deed to my home. I spread them across my bed like puzzle pieces. And for the first time in a long time, I felt the steady hum of myself returning. The woman I'd been before grief softened me, before age cooled me, before motherhood reshaped me. By midnight, I had a plan. By morning, I had made the first call. By the end of the week, nothing in Daniel's world would look the same. But I'm getting ahead of myself. It began with a visit to a lawyer I trusted, Martha Lewis. A woman my age with silver hair and eyes that had seen more human nature than most judges. When I entered her office, she looked up and frowned. "You look like a woman carrying something heavy," she said. "I am," I replied, "and I'm ready to set it down." I told her not the emotional pieces, Not the ache in my chest, but the facts. Clean and sharp. My son intended to move me into a nursing home. He intended to seize control of my house. He intended to eliminate my autonomy with a signature. Martha leaned back. Do you want to fight? No, I said. I want freedom. Then we'll give it to you. And just like that, the plan began. The first step was simple. Ensure that I alone controlled my decisions. The second step was harder. Protect everything Daniel believed was already his. My house, my accounts, my estate, my future. Martha drafted papers while I sat quietly at her desk, watching the ink dry like a new layer of armor. Then she handed me a pen. Are you ready? She asked. I looked at the signature line. My full name, Evelyn Margaret Hart, printed neatly below it, a name I hadn't truly owned in years. Yes, I said. When I walked out of her office, the wind felt different. Sharper, cleaner, as if the world itself had shifted in recognition. I did not call Daniel. I did not warn him. That was the beauty of it. Let them believe the old woman was drifting. Let them underestimate me. Let them come home unprepared for the storm they'd created. I still had kindness in me, plenty in fact, but I had something else to resolve. The next morning, I began packing. Slowly, deliberately. Not the things people expect to take when moving into a nursing home. No, these were things meant for a life widening, not shrinking. Travel shoes, my passport, a journal untouched since my husband died, 3 novels I always meant to read someday. Someday, it seemed, had finally arrived. As I folded a blouse into my suitcase, I caught my reflection in the mirror. For a moment, I didn't recognize the woman staring back. Her eyes weren't tired. Her hands weren't trembling. She looked awake, alive, 70-5 years old, and for the first time in decades, I felt possibility blooming inside me like a late-season flower refusing to die. That day, I listed my house for a confidential sale. Quiet, fast, discreet. The agent came at dawn, walked the rooms reverently, and said in a hushed voice, "You'll get offers before sunset." I nodded. Of course I would. The house had good bones, just like me. By the end of the same week, the papers were signed. Funds transferred. Everything completed before Daniel's plane even touched the runway. I didn't erase my life. I expanded it. I'll tell you the rest. But you need to understand, this wasn't revenge. Not really, it was a reclamation. When the sale closed, the silence in my house felt different. Not empty, not sorrowful. More like the hush that follows a deep, decisive exhale, the kind you release after holding your breath for years. I walked from room to room, touching door frames, tracing the grooves worn into hardwood by decades of footsteps. Mine and my husband's and my son's. Every mark held a story. And for the first time, instead of feeling tethered to those stories, I felt released from them. People think starting over at my age is reckless. I think staying where others expect you to stay is even more reckless. By Wednesday morning, I had packed 2 suitcases and placed them neatly by the front door. I left the furniture, the old record player, the worn armchair in the corner, where I used to read to Daniel. The walls felt warm with memory, not heavy with loss. A home becomes a burden only when someone else tries to define it for you. I wasn't letting that happen anymore. Before I locked the door for the last time, I paused in the foyer. Light spilled across the floor in honey-colored bands, and I whispered a quiet thank you to the life I'd built there. Not goodbye, thank you. Then I turned the key, slipped it into an envelope for the buyers, and stepped outside into the pale morning air. The world looked sharper, as if someone had lifted a film from my vision. My taxi to the hotel came early, driven by a man with a warm smile and a radio playing low jazz. I sat in the back seat, watching my neighborhood drift past the window. Houses I'd memorized for years suddenly looked miniature, like pieces in a model town. I wasn't leaving my life behind. I was stepping out of something that had stopped fitting me at the hotel. I checked in using a name I rarely used anymore, my maiden name. A small act of reclamation. Evelyn Hart reborn. The clerk didn't know the significance, but I did, and that was enough. For the first 2 days, I did nothing but rest. I let myself enjoy small luxuries: room service tea, soft slippers, evenings with the window cracked open so the air could move freely across my skin. I was learning to relax in my own company again, to think without bracing myself, to breathe without waiting for the next demand, the next obligation, the next subtle jab from my son. On the 3rd morning, my lawyer, Martha, came to meet me. She brought a leather folder with her the second stage of our plan. I sat across from her at a small round table in the hotel lounge, while a pianist played something slow and comforting nearby. Martha slid the folder toward me. Everything is ready. I opened it. Inside, documents, account transfers, a relocation agreement, a healthcare directive that made my autonomy ironclad, and, at the back, the new will. Evelyn, Martha said softly, once you sign these, there is no going back. I looked at her, at the papers, at the life laid out like a map with every escape route marked. I'm not going back, I said. One by one, I signed, slowly, deliberately, with a hand that did not tremble. When I reached the will, I paused. The line naming my son was short, almost delicate in its cruelty to my son. Daniel Hart, I leave the sum of $1. Martha watched me carefully. Are you sure you want it phrased that way? Yes, I said. He'll understand the meaning. I signed it. The pen felt strangely light in my hand, like a tool I had been carrying for years but never truly wielded. After she left, I sat alone with the folder open before me. Every decision in those pages felt like a stitch tightening the seams of a new life, a life sewn by my own hand. Not shaped by expectation or manipulation. I had protected myself. Now I had to transform myself. The next phase wasn't about money or legal strategy. It was about choosing a future with intention. And though I didn't yet know exactly where I would go, I knew one thing. Wherever I walked next, it would be a place chosen by me alone. That evening, I stood at the hotel window and watched the city lights flicker on one by one. They reminded me of fireflies from the summers of my childhood, moving in quiet, joyful patterns through the dark. My grandmother used to tell me that fireflies were the spirits of old women carrying lanterns to guide one. Another home. I didn't want a home anymore. Not the kind with walls. I wanted a horizon, so I began to research. Quietly, methodically, the way I used to prepare reports in my youth, organized, thorough, unhurried. I looked at senior travel programs, long-term stays in different countries, extended trains that carried passengers across continents at their own pace, but nothing felt like mine. Until I stumbled onto a page describing a ship, not a cruise ship, but a residential villa floating community of people who traveled the world permanently, living in private suites, waking to a new port every few weeks. France 1 month, Morocco the next. Fjords in summer, South Pacific in winter. A life spent riding the curve of the earth. Something inside me lit up. I clicked through photographs of quiet libraries overlooking open water, small cafes where residents gathered with wine and stories, decks where the sunrise spilled across the sea in colors found nowhere on land. For a moment, I just stared at the screen. And then I whispered, without meaning to, that's where I belong. It wasn't about luxury. It was about motion. About choosing a life not defined by aging but by curiosity. I had always wanted to travel, but life had been too busy, too heavy, too rooted. Now there was nothing rooting me at all. The next morning, I called the company. A calm, professional woman explained the process, the availability, the cost. It was expensive, yes, but I had sold a house intended to be stolen from me. My future was mine to spend. I'd like to reserve a suite, I said. Of course, she replied. Will you be joining us for the next departure from Lisbon? Yes, I said, surprising myself with how steady my voice felt. Yes, I will. After the call, I felt my heart beating in a slow, controlled rhythm. Not excitement, not fear, something, deeper purpose. But the beauty of a quiet plan is that no one knows. It exists until you reveal the ending. On the 8th day of my hotel stay, I bought a new phone with a new number and set my old one aside. I recorded a voicemail, greeting gentle, warm, unmistakably calm. Hello, you've reached Evelyn. I'm traveling for a while. Please leave no message, as I may not return your call. I didn't say where I was going. I didn't owe that to anyone. Then, with 2 days remaining before Daniel's return, I walked to the waterfront and let myself breathe in the soft smell of the tide. I sat on a bench watching gulls sweep through the evening sky. The world moved around me, unbothered, unhurried, and I realized something. This moment, right here, was the first breath of my second life. My son believed he was trimming the edges of my world, but all he'd done was force it open. In 2 days, he and Melissa would come home to find their plan empty-handed, their power dissolved, their expectations shattered, their arrogance confronted by quiet truth. I didn't hate them. Hate is too heavy for a woman who plans to travel light, but I would not, could not, allow them to shape my final years into something small. The world was wide, and I was ready. The morning Daniel returned to the city, I was already gone from the hotel. I had checked out quietly, leaving the keycard on the desk with a small note thanking them for their kindness. The lobby was warm with early sunlight, the kind that makes the air look dusted in gold. I stepped outside with my 2 suitcases, feeling strangely buoyant. Like a woman half my age beginning her first adventure instead of her last. A taxi took me to the train station, where I would travel 2 hours to meet the shuttle that would carry me toward the airport, and eventually, toward Portugal, toward the ship waiting like a patient animal at the edge of the world. But even as I moved farther from the life that had tried to shrink me, I could picture him. I could see Daniel unlocking the door to my old house, the house he thought would soon be his. I could imagine the sound the lock made, sharp and hollow in the early morning quiet. They would have expected to find me in the kitchen, or perhaps in the living room with a blanket across my knees, pretending not to notice their impatience. They would have rehearsed this scene, practiced their lines, softened their tones to sound generously authoritative. But instead, they found nothing. Just a clean floor, bare rooms, a hollow echo. And then, the sign, the one I knew would be waiting for them, like a clean blade. Sold. I wasn't there to witness it, but I did not need to be. Some moments in life are so predictable, you can feel them even from oceans away. I imagined Daniel staring at the sign with wide, blank eyes, trying to understand how the world had shifted under his feet without his permission. Melissa would have been the first to speak. She always was. Perhaps she gasped. Perhaps she began shouting before her mind had time to catch up with her body. And Daniel, my boy who grew into a man who forgot who raised him, he would have looked down at his hands as if he expected answers to be printed on his own skin. I don't know if they called me immediately. Maybe they tried the old number out of reflex, expecting the mother they controlled to answer on command. But that phone was gone now. Left behind somewhere in a drawer like a husk shed by a creature moving into a different shape. Eventually, they would have tried the new number, the one they found on paperwork or through their own determined searching. And when they did, all they got was my recorded voice, soft, steady, carrying wind in the background. Hello, you've reached Evelyn. I'm traveling for a while. Please leave no message, as I may not return your call. I like to imagine the silence that followed, a silence so thick, even they couldn't talk their way out of it. The train rocked gently beneath me as I pictured all of this, the rhythmic clack of the tracks grounding me in the present. Outside the window, fields spread wide and green, dotted with cows grazing without any sense of human urgency. The world felt calm, spacious, honest. I rested my forehead lightly against the glass. I was not celebrating what I had taken from them. I was mourning what they had never offered me. Their love had been conditional, tied to convenience. Mine had been unconditional for too long. Letting go was not a punishment. It was a mercy for all of us. The plane to Lisbon was long and quiet, filled with strangers wrapped in their own thoughts. I slept a little, ate a little, stared at the clouds that drifted below like mountains softened into vapor. There is something humbling about being suspended between earth and sky. Things that once felt enormous shrink into perspective. When we landed, the air was cooler, salted by the nearby Atlantic. I breathed it in deeply. My bones felt more awake than they had in years. The shuttle to the port took me through winding streets of cobblestone and bright-windowed houses, each corner revealing something unexpected. Musicians played in doorways. Children chased pigeons through plazas. Elderly couples walked arm in arm, moving slowly but not timidly. Life here seemed unbothered by time. And then I saw her. The ship. She rose from the water like a city carved from pearl, her hull gleaming in the late afternoon sun. Dozens of balconies lined her sides like rows of open pages in a book waiting to be filled. As we pulled closer, I could see people standing along the rails, residents already living the life I was stepping into, some talking softly, some laughing, some simply watching the horizon. I felt something inside me loosen, like a knot finally untying. At the check-in desk, a young man with kind eyes looked at my passport and smiled. Welcome home, Miss Hart. Home. What a gentle, unusual word to offer someone who arrived with only 2 suitcases and a heart. Held together by determination and grace, he escorted me to my suite, a bright, airy space with wide windows that opened onto the restless blue of the sea. The room smelled faintly of lavender and polished wood. Sunlight spilled across the bed, across the little desk, across the floor like a blessing. I placed my hand on the glass and whispered, "Thank you for waiting." That first night aboard, I walked the deck until the sky deepened into navy and the stars began to reveal themselves. I listened to the soft slap of water against the hull, to the low humming of engines carrying us forward. The world felt both enormous and intimate, as if the ocean were holding us in its ancient hands. A woman around my age, with silver hair tied in a loose knot, approached with a gentle smile. "First day?" she asked. "Yes," I said. It gets easier, she told me. Leaving things behind. The ship teaches you how to move forward without carrying too much weight. I nodded. I think I'm ready. She took my hand in hers, warm and soft. Then you'll be just fine. For the first time in a long while, I believed it. As I settled into bed that night, the ship rocking me like a cradle, I felt no guilt, no fear, no lingering attachment to the life I had shed. I thought of Daniel, yes, but not with bitterness. He would learn his own lessons in time, or he wouldn't. Either way, he would have to face the mirror life eventually holds up to all of us. I closed my eyes and let the rhythm of the sea carry me into sleep. In the morning, when I stepped onto my balcony, the sun was rising soft pink, gentle gold, a new story unfolding across the sky, the kind of sunrise you feel instead of simply seeing. I rested my hands on the rail. My fingers looked older in that light, lined with years, but they were steady. They had signed papers, they had packed suitcases, they had built a life, lost it, and built again, and now they held the rail of a ship moving ever forward. A gull passed overhead, crying out as if calling something into being. I closed my eyes and let the sound wash over me. People think the end of life is a narrowing, a dimming room, a shrinking world, but sometimes, if you're brave or desperate enough, it is an opening, a gentle widening, a permission to return to yourself. In that quiet dawn, with nothing left to claim me but the horizon, I whispered something to the sea, a truth that had lived in my chest for decades but had only now found the courage to surface. I am not done. Then, softer, like a vow to myself, and I will not be small again. The ship moved forward, slicing the waves into silver. The sky brightened, the world opened, and I, a 70-something woman once mistaken for a burden, stood at the edge of it all finally, beautifully, unquestionably free.